And we are live. That happened faster than I was expecting. What's going on, everybody? NBA Strategy Show Tuesday, November 12th. And we're kicking off the NBA Cup today. 8 NBA Cup games, which does make for a little bit of a more nuanced discussion. And we'll talk about that as we go through these games. We're coming back off of yesterday's fun little 5-gamer that had everything locking at 8, which didn't go the direction that I was hoping it would go. Big games out of SGA and Wemby. It was a stock party yesterday across the slate. Never had one that truly put all the pieces together. The Amin Thompson, Tari Eason, Alperen Şengün stuff was okay. By the time I got to lock, I was relatively close to the field for SGA and for Wemby. I know during the deeper dive, I was quite a bit lighter on both of those guys. Actually haven't confirmed, but I know I was like in the ballpark on both. Let's see. I ended up with 17% SGA. He was 23% owned. And I ended up with 14% Wemby, and he was 12% owned. So like I got in the ballpark there. My 3 most exposed guys were Şengün, Eason, and Thompson. All 3 of those guys worked out quite well. I had a bunch of Zaire Williams, and I definitely didn't see anything interesting from him earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that he wasn't great. No, 27 and a quarter is okay. Played 28 minutes, so I don't mind that I got to him. Who else did I? Garland ended up being a real big problem. That ended up being a Donovan Mitchell day. Alvarado was a huge problem. Obviously, probably the worst play on the slate when all was said and done. I had a bunch of Kevin Huerter, which wasn't great. Dylan Brooks wasn't great. Jared Allen wasn't great. First couple guys were awesome, but basically everybody I took a stand on after that was terrible. What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Mike. I was hoping for a big game out of Cam Thomas, too. I ended up with quite a bit less of him by the time we got to lock. I only had 17, which was still, a bit over the field, but not enough that we were looking for. I don't think Ty Jerome was in the winning lineup. Marvin Bagley definitely didn't get it done yesterday. So now we're here. So one overarching thought for what we've got going on here today. We need to remember that point differential is a thing in these NBA Cups. That is a tiebreaker. There are 5 teams in each group. You only play 4 games. If you go 4-0, you're set. If you go 3-1, you've got a chance to go through. It's probably like 50-50 or so. If you lose any more than 1 game, then you're cooked. It's the tiebreakers at 3-1 that are the huge piece of this. So we're going to imagine that some teams are going to play their starters a bit more in order to try to run up the score, at least a bit. Now, in situations like Atlanta and Boston, which we're going to lead off with, they're already 15-point favorites. And while I assume Boston would want to win the NBA Cup, and really, based on the group they're in, they're going to be in great shape either way. The only other team with a pulse in their group is Cleveland. The winner of that game will likely be the team that goes 4-0 in the group and picks up the dub. And I'd be very surprised if the other team doesn't get one of the at-large spots. But, I have a hard time believing that Boston is going to turn the dial up if they're up, 19 at the beginning of the 4th quarter. Because they are playing for something different. Do they want to succeed and move forward and game that system by increasing their point differential? Yeah, for sure. But not at the expense of Jason Tatum, who's already questionable for today. Al Horford, who's questionable for today. Jaylen Brown just got back after missing 5 games. So, their situation is weird. But, some of these other teams, It's really going to depend on how much we think they're going to put their foot on the gas. We see so many teams that are already banged up. I mean, Atlanta is missing 100 dudes. There's no Trae Young today. Orlando is already missing Paolo. Miami is without Jimmy Butler. Philly doesn't have Maxey. Toronto doesn't have Barnes. Milwaukee doesn't have Lillard or Middleton. Phoenix is without Durant. Everybody else is sort of okay, but a lot of those teams aren't that great. So it is a very interesting dynamic. And it could be a situation where maybe you want to grab some overs in a couple different spots. But for now, I have everything projected. I've gone through and handled my rate changes. So I think I've got a pretty good feel for it. We'll see as the day goes on if we see I wouldn't be surprised if we saw incremental creep up of basically all of the totals if we're expecting a little bit more scoring. Because in theory, the more that you're playing good players, the higher you would expect the scores to be too, to a degree. There are a lot of defense first guys that are on the bench. But it is an interesting day. It is a very interesting day. All right, let me get the final injury report pulled up. The one that I pulled up is from 4:30 this morning because that is when I was awake and doing this. I could have done the process show today easily. I was up for 2 hours before that would have started. I'll get the 8 o'clock injury report up. So for Atlanta, let's get this moving. Oh, I forgot something. Hit the like button, guys. If you're here, that would help me out a ton. If you're watching on Twitter, follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman or follow Stokastic_com. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Let me go ahead and put the ownership in. Did I export both of those? Sure did. I got to close my workbook. That's annoying. Froze up the workbook. Let's save that bad boy. There we go. Get back in here. Or not. All right, quit. Tummy's gurgling a little bit here. I'm a hungry boy. Need to get some num-nums. Izzy, never happening. 4:30 wake up time is wild. Yeah, I didn't want that to happen, but I woke up and I was just like, it's going to be easier if I just get my day started. Holy shit, did Brogdon play last night? Did I miss him? Aaron Hines, where did that context come from? Did he just get announced as questionable or something? How the hell did you land on Malcolm Brogdon right now? Anyway, let me refresh ownership and let's get this started. Oh, wow. Oh, no, we're good. I thought I froze it again. There we go. All righty. We're going to get it started on the Atlanta side. They are 15.5-point dogs in Boston, 226 total. Here is the injury report for the Atlanta Hawks today. No Bogdan Bogdanovic, no Kobe Buffkin, no DeAndre Hunter, no Vit Krejci, no Seth Lundy, no Trae Young, no Cody Zeller. The only one out of that group that isn't dealing with some sort of injury, well, two of them technically. Seth Lundy is with the G League team. And then DeAndre Hunter is actually out for the birth of a child, although he has been nursing a knee injury. So the one guy that we got to talk about here is going to be the overwhelming chalk today, and probably pretty clearly the best play that's going to exist, and that is going to be Keaton Wallace. He's 80% owned on DraftKings. He's 53% owned on FanDuel. He was my number one guy coming out of my DraftKings sim. I mean, he's $200 above the minimum. He's already been playing at the minimum straight backup run to Trae Young, sometimes a couple extra minutes on the other side. They don't really have anybody else on the team with his skill set at guard at this point. All of them are out. So as I look at this, I gave him 32 minutes, 7.7x his salary, close to 25 fantasy points at 3,200. I can see why he's 80% owned, and every bit of that makes sense. No brainer, easiest name to click on. He probably closes in a blowout because they don't have anybody else. I think he's playing 30 minutes today, barring injury or foul trouble, no matter what happens in this game. And if somehow it's even mildly competitive, he's probably playing like 36 or more. He's the easiest dude to click on. He's the first name you click on in a cash game. I mean, he's in for a world of hurt against Boston. The matchup really couldn't be much worse. It's going to be a real welcome to the league moment with a sea of Derek White and Drew Holiday ruining your day. But he's just the best player on the slate today. So Keaton Wallace, we're starting off the show. We're going to talk about this stuff for another 50 minutes. He is the best play that we'll get to, and it's the first thing we're talking about. I got to pull up schedule for when I get to that point. Got it. Now, for the rest of Atlanta, we're seeing 30-ish plus % ownership coming into Jalen Johnson. For the most part, I agree with it. He does look like the clear second best play from Atlanta. He's a better play on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings because of the MPE. Same price, but small forward and power forward. So there's a reason he's getting a little bit more love on the FanDuel side. He looks really good. Dyson Daniels is 10% owned on DraftKings at $6K. He's $1,000 more expensive on FanDuel. That I find mildly interesting, but he looks solid on DraftKings. I think Garrison Matthews isn't like the craziest thing in the world to try to do today. Maybe that's David Roddy, but they're just so short on dudes. I mean, they really just only have centers and guys you don't want to roster. Risache is a pivot if you want it. I'm not all that interested in Capella or a Kongwu or Larry Nance. But Wallace and Johnson, priorities. Garrison Matthews, Dyson Daniels, Zachary Risache, guys that you can get to. So Jeremy Savage says, Drew not even going to try. Here's the really interesting part about Drew, because that was sort of my first thought. The status of Tatum and Horford will matter a little bit more here. And maybe the points prop on Drew Holiday is just what it is because of the assumption that maybe Tatum's not playing. But I basically couldn't get to his points prop. I want to say that it was 14.5 when I went through this game. Let me check quickly on FanDuel. Yeah, 14.5 is the points prop for Drew. I could only get him to like 12, even in 32 minutes. I checked every rate I could. So I'm thinking the assumption in that market is that Tatum's closer to out than in, and we get that giant usage bump across the board for everybody else. Now, for Boston, there's not really a ton of ownership coming in here. Tatum is 12-2 on both sites. He's around 15% owned. Jaylen Brown is 8,200 and 8,300 on DK and FanDuel. He's around 15% owned. White and Holiday both got to 10 on FanDuel. I think all these guys are appropriately owned. I don't think there's a single priority for Boston. Jaylen Brown would be my preferred option. He looks worse than Jalen Johnson does. Like, I prefer Jalen Johnson to Jaylen Brown in the battle of the Jalen's. But I don't think you're getting to anybody from Boston a lot. Like, you want to take that stand on Tatum or Brown, fine. Or if Tatum ends up out, then Jaylen Brown is going to be pretty popular, and everybody will incrementally look a bit better. For now, though, I don't think there's Boston guys where you're like, that's the guy that I have to have today. It's the Atlanta team that's going to be soaking up a lot more ownership. But we also have to be aware that Boston might just try to kick the shit out of them in a big way and hang like a 40-burger dub on them and like lock in a really good point differential, because that's going to matter a bit. Man, that piss-colored Gatorade is delicious this morning. Slim Lancaster, good morning. I saw another question that I wanted to hit before. Where did it go? Maybe I lost it. So yeah, Boston's a little weird. I mean, Peyton Pritchard looks like a guy that you would want to take a GPP flyer on. Only 1% owned at 5,100. Again, the Tatum status here will play a really big role, but I don't hate rolling the dice on him. But Atlanta's the side you want, and that is largely swallowed up by Keaton Wallace. Eagle Watch, you had to have SGA yesterday. He had 77 fantasy points, man. I'm assuming you couldn't have won without Shea and Wemby, but I haven't looked into the value. But yeah, you're not going to not win when the guy goes for 45, 9, 3, and 7 stocks. That's an absolute gotta have it, dude. I mean, he was 6 points clear of Wemby, 17 clear of Donovan Mitchell. Yeah, you had to have Shea. I mean, like, technically, probably you can get an optimal lineup or a lineup that had a higher score without him than what won. But you also probably then had to play like someone that was unplayable. All right, let's go to game number 2. This one's a little different. Miami and Detroit. So the Heat are 1.5 point favorites in Detroit, 216 total. No Jimmy Butler for Miami in this one, which really changes up the Heat. Tyler Hero is available. On the opposite side, Jalen Duren is questionable, still coming back from that sprained ankle. Isaiah Stewart is probable. Similar story, right ankle sprain. And then Asar Thompson's still working his way back. Now, ownership for Miami. We've got 25% coming into Bam at 8K on DraftKings and 40 coming into Bam on FanDuel at 7,800. Probably a hair over-owned, but definitely a guy you need to get to today. Just increased everything for him with no Butler around. He's just a different part of the offense at that point. The only other guy getting real love on both sites is Tyler Hero. Close to 20 on DraftKings, 30 on FanDuel. I think that is all completely spot on. He should be getting ownership. Those two guys benefit more than basically anybody else other than guys that get additional minutes because of Butler. Hero 7,400 on DraftKings, 7,200 on FanDuel. Him and Bam are like a coin flip to me. I could go either direction. I have Hero more optimal on DK. I have Bam more optimal on FanDuel. Terry Rozier, not getting much love on DraftKings at 5%, and no one else for Miami is getting any love. It's Rozier at 5% and no one other than 1% for the rest of the Heat. Rozier is getting 20% ownership on FanDuel. He has an MPE there. He's point guard, shooting guard, and he's 5,900. So I get the appeal of Rozier on FanDuel. Maybe you don't want 20% of him, but definitely a guy that you're looking at. There's 3 dudes for Miami on FanDuel. There's 2 dudes for Miami on DraftKings. I don't really see the path to anybody else here, whether that's Jaquez. That's it. We're just going to draw the line there. I mean, Haywood Highsmith has been playing a lot more minutes these past 3 games. He's probably going to be guarding Cade a lot. But he's a 0.67 fantasy point per minute dude. So, you need a real specific night out of him. So to me, it's Bam and Hero and really nothing else. I actually like Highsmith more than Rozier on DraftKings, but I don't think that's going to be something that matters for me. Do you guys like anything on Miami? Andrew Martinez asked if Jaquez is too expensive. He is, and I don't have a great feel on like how many minutes he's going to play. Conceivably, he could play like 28. I don't think that's as likely. That's not anywhere near what I gave him. Jovic is a straight, absolutely not. There's no chance you're playing Nikola Jovic today. So there are 4 games with a total at 218 or less. We have 3 games higher than 225, and then Dallas and Golden State is 232. It's really hard to get to pieces in these games as this is currently set up. I actually have to add Ron Holland's name to pull something on FanDuel. Maybe I don't. Maybe he's Ron Holland the second. Did that get it? Huh, it did. Funny. 4 different names. Bam has been dreadful so far this year, S&P. Has he? I don't say that to doubt you. I just legitimately haven't looked at it. Shooting 44% from 2, 20% from 3, but not like it was ever going to be good. Stocks are up quite a bit. More active with the steals. Rebounds haven't moved, but yeah, 49% true shooting. Woof. 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 So yeah, I'm not paying that much of attention to Miami. And for whatever attention you're paying to Miami, you're paying way less attention to the Detroit Pistons. Highest owned guy on DraftKings and FanDuel is 6% to Jaden Ivey. There's no ownership coming into Detroit. Now, I like these guys in GPPs. None of them are a priority, but like 5% Cade ownership, you get 15 of him today at 5% ownership. You're pretty happy for what this slate is. Sort of the same situation for Tobias Harris or Jaden Ivey. Probably not all that interested in like Hardaway or Beasley or the centers, but I think Cade, Tobias Harris, and Jaden Ivey deserve a little bit more love than they're getting. It's a price play. They're a little expensive. You don't get the same sort of value you really want out of them on a point per dollar basis. But because of their ownership, I think they're a little bit more interesting in GPPs today. Crispy, what's up? So weird game. You're not going to have a ton of it. It's mostly going to be Bam and Hero. But I kind of like the idea of rolling the dice on Cade, Tobias Harris, and Jaden Ivey in the big contest. Especially because I believe it's a $5 tonight on DraftKings. And that means there's like 90,000 entries. Yeah, 95,000 entries in the $5. These are the types of plays where like you're happy to have one of them in the end. All right, game 3. Charlotte Hornets, 6.5 point dogs in Orlando, 213 total. This is the lowest total on the slate. I have it with the second lowest pace on the slate, but it does have the lowest total, which shouldn't be all that surprising. Charlotte's not a very good offense. Orlando's certainly not a very good offense. Orlando is obviously good defensively. Neither team plays particularly fast. But we are seeing quite a bit of ownership here, depending on the team. For Charlotte, there's not much. Only Brandon Miller on DraftKings is in double digits. He got to 11%. He's 6,600 on DraftKings and 7,500 on FanDuel. Those are very different price points. MPE on both. So I like Brandon Miller on DK. I think he is clearly the best Charlotte option today. You could always click LaMelo Ball's name. I think Grant Williams looks a lot like what we just talked about for Detroit. John Johnson, should I be afraid of negative ROI lineups? You should never play one. The answer is in the question. I think Grant Williams looks okay as a GPP option. He's a 0.8 guy, but playing around 30 minutes with no Nick Richards and with, I'll say no Mark Williams, but I think we could just confidently say that Mark Williams isn't a guy that exists any longer. After that, it's kind of rough. Cody Martin's minutes have been up a little bit lately. He's still Cody Martin. I'd say it's mostly Brandon Miller. On FanDuel, it's basically nobody. 4% to LaMelo is the highest ownership. You're just avoiding them altogether. Now, the Orlando side is where we're getting some love. Franz Wagner's 12% on DraftKings, 24 on FanDuel. Now, I didn't have a single guy from Orlando cross the 10% optimal mark on DK. But they have 3 guys north of 10% ownership. Franz, Mo Wagner, and then 24 to Goga. Not a believer in that today. It's not that he's not a good point per dollar play. It's not that he's not a good value. On an 8-game slate with the amount of centers we're going to have, I think Goga is overowned. Similarly, like Mo Wagner, not someone I have interest in. You can make a case that like you'd want to roll the dice on Jalen Suggs, but that price is pretty tough to want to get to. As I see this, it's really, for me, Franz and nobody else. Like, I could understand getting to Goga, especially on DraftKings, where he's $5,300. He's $1,000 more expensive on FanDuel. You're not going there on FanDuel. I understand the value, and I'll definitely have some Goga on the DraftKings side. But I really just don't want much more than Franz. This game's gross. They're just not good offensive teams. And when you have the lowest total on an 8-game slate, it's going to be hard to get to people without price errors. It's really hard. Like, when everybody's price is around what it's supposed to be, then you're looking at a situation where you have you're already down 40 overall fantasy points in the game in comparison to everybody else. Like, I have Charlotte projected for 214.7 fantasy points as a team. Like, Dallas and Golden State are both in the 230s. It's hard to make that up without pricing problems. Let's see. On average, when Goga was in the optimal lineup on DraftKings, he had 44 fantasy points. His 20th percentile outcome when he was in the optimal was 39.5. So, yeah, I mean, you're looking for 38 out of Goga to feel good about it in a GPP. It's not that he can't do that, because he can. He's a 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy. But I think we're going to talk about a lot of centers today that are probably a bit underrepresented. And he just naturally looks like a guy I would probably be light on. I could be wrong, but that's how I read it to start the day. Anything you guys want me to touch on here from Charlotte and Orlando? We're making good time so far. I'm happy the NBA Cup is back. I like this tournament. I will once again put it out there. I am correct in what I'm about to say. Everyone should listen to me. The winner of the NBA Cup should get the first pick after the lottery in the upcoming draft, and it should be tradable immediately. I think that would be an incredible carrot for some of these teams. You look at teams, I mean, Miami, not that I think they're a threat here. New York, Milwaukee would be massive. Phoenix would be massive. Dallas would be massive. Minnesota would be massive. If those teams could get the 15th pick in the draft and have the ability to attach that in a trade, that is a massive value for teams that are looking to add guys at the deadline, especially now where teams over the second apron can't aggregate salaries and they can't take back certain players into mid-level exceptions. I think that extra pick would get really interesting. So I said it last year and I was right, and I'm going to say it again right now, and I'm right. At some point in time, that is what they should be doing. Oh man, that Gatorade is hitting today. All right. Here's another one that's absolutely gross and largely unplayable except for GPP options. And that is basically only the Knicks side. So the Knicks are 1-point favorites in Philadelphia, 215.5 total. Now, the Knicks have everybody they normally have, although Miles McBride is questionable. Cam Payne is questionable once again. The interesting part here for the Knicks is it's not like they can go for it in an NBA Cup game. They go for it every game. Now, you can't make it a part of the lottery. That's too much. That's too much. You can't have the Boston Celtics win the NBA Cup, get a lottery pick, and then jump from 14th to 1st. It's too much. People would freak out about that. Just a quality old 15th pick. You attach that to a dead salary to bring back a rotation piece. That's what you need. So the Knicks are unowned. 7% to Towns on DraftKings. The most of anybody else is 2% anywhere. All of these guys look like GPP plays to me. They're definitely guys I want to get to in a 90,000 person contest because I think they're all like 10% optimal. I don't have a preference between any of them, where Bridges, Hart, Brunson, Anunoby. I mean, I will say that Towns grades out the best, but of the starting five for the Knicks, none of them are getting any ownership. Their prices are absolutely too high, but I love the idea of having one in a lot of GPP lineups. Like if you knew they were all 2% owned and you had 10% of Bridges, 10% of Hart, 10% of Brunson, 10% of Anunoby, I'd feel really good about that. But they are unowned across the board. It's 1 or 2% ownership to Bridges, Hart, Brunson, Anunoby on both sites. You just cannot go here unless they are pivots to ownership, because they can't be guys that you just get. But I like them. They're a fascinating team on a slate like this because no one's going there. And I like that. It'll be really interesting if McBride ends up out. That'll be, I don't know what these idiots are going to do at that point. Then maybe you're projecting everybody for 40. But even right now, I got 37 to Anunoby, 37 to Brunson, 38 to Hart, 39 to Bridges. I like these guys in GPPs. If you click a Knicks name in a cash game, send me that. Unplayable in cash. Philly is miles less playable than New York. 3% ownership to Embiid on DraftKings at 10-4. 4% ownership to Paul George on FanDuel. That's it. Everybody else is 0 or 1. And in this case, I don't even think they look like GPP plays. Like, at least I have Knicks around 10% optimal. The highest optimal rate I got for anybody from Philly is 3% on DK. And it's 7 to Kyle Lowry and Caleb Martin on FanDuel. It would blow my mind if I had a single share of someone from Philadelphia today. Seems like Embiid's going to be in and around that 30 mark, at least based on where the betting markets are right now. I undercut that a lot when I first woke up. Then once I got to the markets, I realized that I was light. But this is the worst team on the slate, and it's not close. It's the third lowest total. I have it with the lowest pace. Both of these teams are next level slow, and they're going to be even slow. Philly's, whatever you think Philly is, they're a lot slower when Kyle Lowry is at the helm and Tyrese Maxey isn't here. It's not like Joel Embiid's going to be running the floor. I don't even know if Kyle Lowry can run any longer. So my recommendation is to buy a red marker and scribble out all the names for Philadelphia. Unplayable. Fully unplayable. God, they're gross. What do you guys like from the Knicks and the Sixers? I can't imagine it's a lot. And I can only imagine that if you guys are going to say any names, they're coming from the New York Knicks. They look terrible. This whole game looks awful. Yeah. Kyle Lowry waddles. Agreed. This is just not the game. Now, the next 4 games, 3 of them have totals 228 or higher. McCain in one entry? Nope. Definite no. 3 McCains. 100% no. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. You cannot play McCain. I understand that he played 30 minutes in the last 2 games. I think that ends up looking a little bit different in an NBA Cup game against the Knicks with Embiid back. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm light. Not that great of a per minute, dude. Price is already $4,300 on DraftKings, $5K on FanDuel. I can give him a bunch more minutes, and he's still a straight no. Leonard Martin, Embiid. I don't know how you could possibly want to do that. I can't see it. At 10-4, knowing the other pay-up options that you can get to today, whether that's, Booker with no Durant, Giannis, Luka, Ant, Tatum if he plays. I have no justification to click on Joel Embiid's name today. Hopefully he's healthy. I'd love nothing more than to watch Joel Embiid go out there and hang, 30, 12, 5, and a couple stocks. Yeah, S&P. I'm gonna regress that quite a bit. By all accounts, it looks like Embiid's playing 30 minutes today. If not, if you don't think Embiid's playing 30 minutes, you guys should be rushing to the sports books and betting his unders. Does Cat take it to a potential out of shape Embiid? No. I don't think so. Maybe. I mean, he can. It doesn't strike me as the thing that he's going to do, but it'll be interesting to have Andre Drummond be able to be crazy and play as hard as he possibly can in 18 minutes. All right, this next game is going to be something to talk about. And the next game is also going to be why you don't play Joel Embiid. We're going to go Toronto and Milwaukee. Raptors are 7.5-point dogs in Milwaukee, 228 total. Now, you're basically not going to be rostering the Toronto Raptors in this one. The highest owned guy for Toronto is 3%. Only thing we're really waiting on is quickly being questionable. But there's no ownership here. There is to RJ Barrett on FanDuel. He has the MPE, small forward, power forward, and he's 7,600, which is $700 cheaper than DraftKings. He's pulling 15% ownership. Every other ownership on DraftKings and FanDuel for every other player here is 3% or below. So I do like RJ Barrett on FanDuel. I do think Jakob Poeltl is worth a flyer on FanDuel at 7,300 if you want an unowned center. But I am already out of things to say about the Raptors. To me, you do not play them. Their offense is bad. This Milwaukee defense is still good and probably better today because of their injury news. And I think that's the team we need to talk about now. The injury news for the Milwaukee Bucks is as follows. Damian Lillard is out. He is in the concussion protocol. Obviously, Chris Middleton is still out. But Giannis probable, Andre Jackson probable, Gary Trent Jr. probable. 50% ownership to Giannis at 11.3 on DK. 44% ownership to Giannis coming in on FanDuel. There is no debate here. This is the best pay up today. There's no Damian Lillard, which means Giannis does literally everything. He was 22% optimal for me on DraftKings, 30 on FanDuel. I don't think you'll be surprised to hear that you should be clicking the Giannis Antetokounmpo name today. Not to mention, it's Giannis. So, I'm not exactly telling anybody something they've never heard before. Brook Lopez is getting some love on FanDuel at 5,200. He's 19% owned. That looks solid for what his price is. Torian Prince got to 10 on DraftKings. That's fine. Andre Jackson got to 13 on FanDuel. That's fine. The guy we want to talk about, though, is Ryan Rollins. So flat 3K DraftKings, 3,600 on FanDuel. He's about 15% owned. Now, this is going to be tricky because they can do a couple different things here. I probably have him light in minutes at this moment. But at the same time, I'm nervous to give him a bunch. Now, Rollins has, over the past 2 games, since they axed DeLon Wright from the rotation, has basically played the minutes that Damian Lillard didn't play at point guard. So you immediately think like, well, Ryan Rollins is going to be playing a chunk of time at point guard today. But I only went to 20 minutes. I did bring DeLon Wright back into the rotation and went 14. I think you'll also see Connaughton sort of in that role. I think you'll kind of see AJ Green in that role. And I'm nervous to overproject any one guy because they don't have any incentive for it to be Ryan Rollins or DeLon Wright or Green or Connaughton. Like, it's kind of just going to be the guy that's working the best. Obviously, Rollins is an exceptional play. And if he ends up being the starter, you know, you're probably giving him 24 plus pretty easily, at which point that ownership skyrockets and he'll never get to the Keaton Wallace range because there's too many alternatives for him, whereas Wallace has nothing behind him to threaten him. But he will start to look like a really good, I mean, he already looks like an exceptional value. I actually have him at 6.3x his salary. Every minute we give him just blows that out of the water. He looks great, but he's going to be a guy that I have to spend a lot of time on, digging into the rest of the industry, paying attention to the betting markets. Because they could just as easily... We got to remember, this is Doc Rivers. And while he might have taken DeLon Wright out of the rotation with Dame gone, Doc Rivers likes his vets. It wouldn't surprise me in any way to see DeLon Wright just start at point guard today. That wouldn't shock me at all. So be aware that the ownership for Ryan Rollins and DeLon Wright and potentially Pat Connaughton and AJ Green, depending on who ends up in that starting lineup, this is going to move around today. It's one of the bigger pivot points that could create something interesting. Whoever starts for Milwaukee at point guard is going to look pretty good. But I'm nervous about however many minutes you give any individual one of those dudes. The only thing that you need to know for Milwaukee is that Giannis is a guy that you should absolutely click on. The best play of the day that you could pay up for. JHTV, how do you feel about Booker, Giannis, Bam in the same lineup? Terrible. I don't know why you would want to click on 3 guys that are all NBA guys. The answer to that question is always, I feel fine. No matter what 3 names you basically say. Any combination of names you give me, you can find positive ROI lineups for it, I would imagine. So it's always fine. Yeah, look, Gary Trent can get his minutes bumped back up a little bit. I mean, you guys can see I went 24 to Trent, 24 to Jackson, 24 to Green. Like, I'm not confident with what we have here. It's all kind of gross. Except for Giannis. I will say that I like Toronto more in this game. You know, if that line is 7.5, I like the Raptors side of it a little bit more. I also like the under. Line has already come down 2 points too, so I think I was on the right side of that one. Alrighty, have we gotten the schedule yet for today? No. I could pull that up and take a guess. All right, schedule for the rest of the day. Jason, are you trolling me or is that real? Okay, schedule for today. NFL strategy show coming up at 10 a.m. I will be on Odd Shopper Live on our Odd Shopper YouTube channel at noon. We have the NHL strategy show at 2. I'm back for the deeper dive at 5 p.m. Live before lock at 6 p.m. And then Greg and I will be on playback to watch the beginning of the NBA Cup. We'll be there exclusively at 7 p.m. Playback.tv/Stokastic. You'll find links in the description. We'll be there for an hour, watching whatever looks good from those 7 o'clock games, and then likely switching to Knicks Philly unless that's a national TV game, which it certainly might be, at which point we won't be switching to it. Yeah, Jason, I don't have an answer. Play both. Man, Giannis looks so damn good today. I have him at 1.76 fantasy points per minute. I think the most important thing to remember for that Milwaukee side is it absolutely does not matter in any way who starts, other than that's the guy you give a couple extra minutes to. But whoever starts doesn't mean they're closing. Eric, you're right. I do have Rollins projected 20. That is a true statement. Phoenix Suns, 3.5 point favorites in Utah, 228 total. I love the Suns here. Might be a sign that Nurk's not playing or something, but if Nurk is in, I think the Suns should be bigger favorites than 3.5. Frankie, no, he's not. No, he's not. You can tell me that he has played well so far this year, and I'll say, sure. But he still sucks. He still sucks. He's not going to shoot 47% from 3 for the year after 3 straight years of sub 35%. I don't expect him to be 10 percentage points higher than anything he's ever done in the mid-range. The same rebounder. He's the same assist guy. He's the same rim protector. It's just hot shooting. He'll be himself soon enough. So Phoenix. This is the spot that you need to get to today. They are the overwhelming highest owned team right now. 50% ownership on both sites to Devin Booker. 8,800 on DraftKings. 8,900 on FanDuel. Looks amazing. Please play him. Grayson Allen is 59% owned on DraftKings, 40 on FanDuel. Now, I only went to 24 minutes on Grayson Allen, so I might just be a little light here. He did get 27 last time out in that first game without Durant. So I'm going to go ahead and bump him up 2 more minutes right now. But I don't necessarily think he's just the guy that soaks it up. But I'm going to take him up to 26 at least for right now. Because I've got a couple minutes that I can move around. He'll look good. Like, I do think he's a good play. He's 3,700, and he's shooting guard small forward eligible. That is... Brandon, I'm fully expecting it to be Ryan Dunn again. But Allen looks good because of his price and his position. Like, whether I have him undersold or not right now, I like him either way. Also, Brandon, he didn't close. He did get back in OT because, Nurk was done. I mean, he played the final 2.5 minutes of OT. He hadn't been on the floor for the previous 15 to 20. So, close is relative. I mean, he could absolutely close today, but so could Royce O'Neal. So could Ryan Dunn if it breaks the right way. Sort of all just depends on the game. But there's a ton of ownership here. Bradley Beal, 20% owned on DraftKings, 40 on FanDuel. Tyus Jones is 10 on both sites. Nurk is 28 on DraftKings and 10 on FanDuel. Royce O'Neal's getting a little bit of love. Now, I expect the Grayson Allen ownership to come down a little bit. I'd be very surprised he's 60 today unless he starts. I don't think that'll exist. But the price tag and the position are amazing. I don't want to undersell him because he looks really good. But that ownership is a hair high unless you think he's getting 28 minutes. And I don't want to just immediately go there. But my expectation is that Ryan Dunn continues to start. Started the last game, played 7 minutes in the first quarter, another 10 minutes in the second quarter, had the third quarter rotation for 5 minutes, and that's when they started mixing everything up. That's after Nurkic left. That changed up the game a little bit. That's when you saw Grayson Allen pick up that pretty extended run from the third quarter to the fourth quarter. Ultimately, you just want to get a lot of Phoenix for two reasons. One, it's the second highest total on the slate. I have it as the second highest pace. Utah's defense is one of the 5 worst in the league. The only thing that Phoenix really has is offensive talent. This thing looks great. I mean, Bradley Beal's probable today, so I couldn't care less about his injury status. Bob, you might want to lop off some of those minutes for OT. But, I mean, Booker, high-level priority. Beal, semi-priority. Grayson Allen, if he starts, mild priority. If Yusuf Nurkic happens to be out, Mason Plumlee is 4,400 on DraftKings. He will become a really big value play today. So there's a ton of ownership coming into Phoenix, and we have the opportunity to create even more. Because if Nurkic is out, Mason Plumlee will look better than Nurkic does right now. And then you could even start having a conversation about Oso Ighodaro. Now, the Utah side is essentially unowned. Only Walker Kessler is in double digits in ownership on either site. That's 10% on the dot. Everybody else is single digits. Keontae George is questionable. That will be very important for what we have here today. My expectation is that I basically don't play Utah. Clearly, you can always play Markkanen if you want. And Kessler for 5,600 on FanDuel makes some sense. I think the more likely scenario is that you just don't play Utah without Keontae George, unless Keontae George is out. If Keontae George is in, I don't really see a single name on Utah that you would want to click on. They all look not good. I mean, the only guy that I think is even reasonable would be Kessler on FanDuel. If George is out, then you're freeing up 30 minutes. And not that anybody's going to look great in that scenario. They're probably still not really getting to much Utah, but it at least starts to open a path to them. But Utah's near the bottom of the list of teams that you would want to play today. I mean, only Walker Kessler got a 10% optimal or higher on FanDuel. Everybody else is single digits. No, I would have no chance I would play John Collins today. 6,300 on DraftKings, 6,400 on FanDuel. No, thank you. There's nothing here. They look awful. They look awful. It's because they're awful. And their prices are up a bit. They've had a bunch of guys, you had Keontae George out last game. Markkanen missed a chunk of time. So some of these guys are a little bit overpriced. And you see it. Clarkson and Sexton are both here now. They finally were able to use Isaiah Collier last time out. I don't anticipate him being much of a... Maybe Isaiah Collier takes the Patty Mills minutes moving forward. but that's all that's going to be if George is in. Utah looks awful. Phoenix is the side of this game that you want. I didn't realize it was 9:55. I got to get it moving. Dallas and Golden State. Not a ton of ownership here coming into Dallas. We have the Q tag on Lively, probable tag on Luka. 10% for Luka on both sites, 10 to 15 for Clay on both sites. Clearly, Luka's fine. Doesn't look anywhere near as good as Giannis. But there's not really much ownership coming into the rest of these guys. Clay looks all right. You know, a guy that you could work into your lineups. You know, I don't have much interest in Marshall or Dinwiddie. If Lively's back, you're not playing the centers. If Lively's out, then Gafford is still very much in play on DraftKings at 5,200. He's 6,700 on FanDuel, so you can never play Daniel Gafford. But honestly, it's really just Luka, Kyrie, and Clay. And even that, you're not going nuts for it. Yeah, S&P, I don't hate that shout. GPP play for sure. Kyrie looks a little bit better on FanDuel, pulling a little bit more ownership there as well. But the best play here for Dallas is certainly Luka Doncic. For Golden State, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. If you're playing anybody, it's only Steph. I have him 13% optimal on DraftKings, 13% optimal on FanDuel. It's around 18% owned. You know, maybe he plays a couple extra minutes today if this one's competitive and they're trying to pick up a win in the NBA Cup. So I definitely think there's a bigger ceiling for Curry than we normally see. I don't know how you pick another Golden State guy. Like, there's some ownership coming into DeAnthony Melton right now. I'm not interested. I couldn't... If he's getting ownership, I couldn't be less interested. And I like DeAnthony Melton. He played 27 minutes last time out. He played 18 in his first game back, but I don't know how many minutes they want to play him. I gave him 24. These guys play 11, 12 guys every night. So it's not that DeAnthony Melton doesn't look like a good play. He's the best point per dollar play on Golden State. But I have no interest in playing a guy whose minutes could be anywhere from 16 to 28 today, if he's getting the ownership. Everybody else, to me, I'm crossing straight off. Honestly, it's really just Curry and Luka for me more than anything, and then maybe a bit of Clay. I trust none of this. None of it. The Warriors are a death sentence for trying to analyze the game. And it's really just a game that's not pulling all that much ownership. This is probably the game that has the least amount of all the games. And then we close it out with Minnesota and Portland. Wolves are 8.5-point favorites in Portland, 218 total. We kind of know what we're doing with Minnesota at this point. 10% ownership to Randall on DraftKings, 20 on FanDuel. I think that makes sense. I do think Anthony Edwards is a little under-owned on both sites, sort of in that like Cade Cunningham realm, or the same way that S&P just mentioned Markkanen. No problem at all getting to him in a GPP because he's not going to meet much resistance against Portland. You know, Gobert's not really getting much ownership. Naz Reid is getting 20 on FanDuel. To me, that's way too high. He's really only playing like 24 minutes a night, so that'd be something I'd be trying to get away from. Conley got to 10. He plays like 23 minutes a night. It's Ant and Randall for me and not much else. I really have a hard time wanting to get here. Anthony Edwards, though, an underrepresented option in large field GPPs. The Portland side is unowned, and it should be. They are one of the worst offenses in the league, going up against one of the best defenses. It's a pace down spot for Portland. Now they have Shaedon Sharpe back, complicating the matters with some usage. Jeremy Grant got 7% ownership on FanDuel. Everybody else is 4% or below. I like the idea of getting Grant or Simons in the large field stuff, because if Portland happens to sneak this one out, one of those two guys are probably doing a lot of that work. But 8% total ownership to Portland on DraftKings, 17 on FanDuel. Just draw the line through them. S&P, yes, absolutely. It wouldn't shock me at all if they did do it. I don't even know how you could begin to choose which guys that would be. And I don't even have a clue if they'd even do it. But yeah, they might. But I got to wrap this up, guys. NFL Strategy Show is now. I ran long. Apologies to the NFL guys. Those are the 8 games that we've got here for today. Deeper dive at 5 p.m. later tonight where we're going to break them all down once again. It's a fun slate. We got a lot to talk about tonight and a lot of news to wait on. I appreciate you guys being here. Hit that like button on your way out the door. Another strategy show in the books, folks. Good luck tonight.